What up, ladies and gentlemen? So today we are going to be doing Scorpio Saturn. And what happens when Saturn is in the sign of Scorpio in your horoscope? Well, first of all, what is the sign of Scorpio? Sign of Scorpio represents transformation. It represents sudden events. It represents the unknown of your life. The sign of Scorpio brings the unknown of your life to the surface. Things that you had buried underground, but now they come to surface. Scorpio also represents intensified interest towards the occult, towards the dark side of life, towards the unknown side of life. And Scorpio also is a sign that represents surgeries and operations because it's the original 8th house sign. The 8th house. So all the qualities of 8th house always transfer with Scorpio no matter what house it's placed in. Okay. And then you bring Saturn here. Saturn is what? Saturn is your limitation, your discipline, your organization skills, your work, your workaholicness. How much do you work? How much effort will you put in your work? Saturn represents boundaries, meaning that it restricts you from achieving whatever you want to achieve. Because it's a slow-moving planet, it represents delay. Saturn represents iron, oil represents continuous, repetitive jobs. It represents something that is not changing, something consistent. So if you got my earlier part, Scorpio is change, sudden transformation. Saturn is resistance to change. Okay? And then this is also a very tricky position. Why? And I've explained this before. Is that Scorpio and Aquarius have a karmic co-rulers. Aquarius is co-ruled by Rahu. And Ketu rules the sign of Scorpio along with Mars. So Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, but Ketu becomes the karmic co-ruler. What do I mean by karmic co-ruler? It's not some fancy term that I use. It simply means that if Mars represents your ability to adapt to change, if Mars represents your willpower to withstand the change, Ketu represents the qualities of the punishment you're going to get from those transformations. Ketu is like that co-ruler who stands in the back with a book open and he's like, okay, so Scorpio sign Mahadasha is coming, or Scorpio sign placement planets Mahadasha is coming, and you did this, this, and this, and this. So I will give you this degree of change. I will give you this degree of sudden events. I will give you this degree of some disease or something where you will need a sudden operation. Or I will bless you with occult knowledge, or I will bless you with tremendous spiritual and psychic knowledge. That's what Ketu is. So Ketu is not doing the entire job of Scorpio. Ketu is representing the results of the transformation, the good or bad. Because it's sudden ups and downs. So you can experience sudden ups like, oh my God, you're from rag to riches. Or it can represent the other way, from riches to rag. Okay, so when Saturn comes in here, and Saturn is also fear and anxiety, as I always say, because it's a Tamasic planet. Here, first of all, anxiety and fear run simultaneously. There is fear of resistance with change. There's a fear from sudden change, a sudden transformation that comes in life. Because Saturn doesn't like that. And here, in the house of Mars, in the house of change, Saturn becomes chaotic and eccentric. He doesn't know what's going on. He's like, why do I have to deal with all these sudden changes in my life? And so what happens is Saturn, who's also the significator of death and death-like experiences, who's also the significator of the dark world, the occult world, it pushes the person, especially after the age of 35, towards the occult world, like psychic, tarot reading, like any kind of tantric meditation, including astrology. Okay, but the way you can understand Saturn here is by looking at the placement of Ketu and Mars both, where they're placed, because that's how Saturn will react. in the sign of Scorpio. Because in Scorpio, Saturn is becoming a very intense worker. He's becoming cunning, meaning that in order to finish his work, if he has to cheat you and stab you in the back, he will do that. Because he has to abide by the laws of Mars. He has to abide by the laws of Ketu, the laws of Scorpio, because he's sitting there. So his intensity intensifies. Like when he wants to do something, he will do it even if it causes bloodshed. Because again, Mars represents bloodshed. Mars represents cuts, burns, and bruises. So if Saturn is working his blood, sweat, and tears, and in that, if somebody brings some sort of a change, some sort of a blockage, they will try to resist that blockage by hitting them directly right hard on their heart, you can say. And so the way you can assess exactly what Saturn is doing is to see where Ketu is placed. If Ketu is placed in the 9th house, then it shows that Saturn has the ability to withstand the sudden changes in their belief system, sudden changes in their belief system regarding the higher knowledge. If Mars, while Ketu is in the 9th house and Mars is in the 4th house and Saturn is in the ascendant, it shows that you will try to resist the change that comes from transformation of the home, where your mother is suddenly sick, your mother is suddenly not well, or she suddenly dies. How you handle that is seen from that placement. So if Saturn is sitting there and Mars is in the 4th house and Ketu is in the 9th house, it shows you will feel the sudden transformation through something happening in home and with your mother. That change will bring about the change of belief system in higher knowledge and your gurus and teachers. If Ketu is well placed, then it'll show that because of the 4th house transformation, you went towards the 9th house of higher learning. You try to seek a guru to learn something more. But if Mars is damaged and Ketu is damaged, then what will happen is because of the resistance that you try to avoid of the 4th house, you are automatically avoiding the things of the 9th house. Meaning that Saturn in the ascendant represents the self. So a Scorpio ascendant, Saturn is in Scorpio, okay? But if Mars is in the 4th and Ketu is in the 9th, it shows, and both are badly placed, okay? It can show that because of the friction and conflicts at home with your mother, you lost your faith in the higher belief system. You lost your faith in the higher religious learning. You lost your faith in the gurus. But if Mars is damaged and Ketu is good, then it'll show that because of the transformation at home, because of that sudden event of friction between you and your mother, you looked towards the 9th house of religion, higher learning, philosophy, and you found a guru who helped you through those 4th house things. So you see how it's a bit complicated to understand, but you have to look at the placement of both co-lords of Scorpio to see what is happening with them. Are they bringing a change of good or bad, or good and bad, or bad then good? Because if Mars is good, you suddenly have this sudden transformation where you feel close to home, you feel close to your home family members. Okay, but if Ketu is damaged, then it shows that believing in your homeland, your mother, so much that it took you away from your other purposes, which was higher learning, spirituality, and your teachers and gurus that you should be looking up to. You didn't because you found this change in the 4th house. Let me give you another example. Let's say Saturn. For an Aries ascendant, Saturn is in the 8th house. That means it's in the sign of Scorpio in the 8th house. And let's say Ketu is in the 2nd house. And Mars is in the 1st house. So what will happen to Saturn? How will you judge this Saturn? Well, 8th house represents everything that I talked about Scorpio, but also it represents your in-laws, your married life, your family assets, inheritance, government taxes. Okay, so here it can show that Saturn, especially in his Mahadasha, will first of all will give you inheritance. Why? Because the co-lord of Scorpio, Ketu, is in the second house of wealth and family. So through family, you inherited a lot of wealth, and especially in the sign of Taurus, which represents finance. And then Mars is in the first house of your physical agility and of your physical self, your efforts, and your very physical person. Here, Saturn finds this transformation through self. And with Mars aspecting on to the Saturn, it shows somebody who has transformed themselves in their Saturn Mahadasha by either, going into the business of oil, gems, mining, becoming a government secret agent. Like they suddenly found an opportunity to become a government secret agent. Or it also represents somebody who's in sports and they have the most strongest endurance. Like they can run for like 6 hours and they won't be tired. So this is how you will judge this Saturn. There's no like one answer to like, hey, Saturn in Scorpio does this, this, and this. No. Scorpio and Aquarius are two complicated signs that represents the karmic backlogs. And those cannot just be defined by the meaning of Scorpio itself. Because there's a basic Scorpio thing that I can mix in with Saturn, but it doesn't work that way. You always, with Scorpio and Aquarius, you always have to look at the core lords. Like in Aquarius, you look at the core lord Saturn and Rahu. Two different planets represent two different things, yet they have the same foundation. Same thing in Scorpio. Mars and Ketu are a reflection of each other, but they represent two different things, yet they have the same foundation. So you have to look at that and see exactly what Saturn is going through. What kind of transformation is Saturn going through? Like in 8th house Saturn that I just said can also show a surgery, because he's in the 8th house with the aspect of Mars and Ketu. So in Mahadasha of Saturn, it can show that there could be a chronic illness that suddenly required surgery. Maybe you had some problem in your spine or bone, or you suddenly hurt your knee, and so you have this arthritis pain, and in order to drain some fluid, you have to get the surgery done. So all of these things are possible with Saturn. But Saturn feels very uncomfortable in Scorpio. He becomes too intense for his own good. He becomes too deep and involved into what he's doing. And what happens when he looks deep into the darkness to solve his issues, he forgets the world that is above him. And so he goes deeper into his own issues. And this can also, and especially whatever house that Saturn is sitting in, that house, they will have a lot of, not traumatic issues, but a lot of personal secretive issues regarding that house. Like if Saturn is in the 10th house, you can have a lot of issues with your dad or with your father in the early childhood that suddenly transformed your personality. If Saturn is in the 5th house, it can show sudden change in personality, a sudden, a transformation that came through your children. In the 1st house of self, it can represent sudden transformation in your personality and who you are in the Mahadasha of Saturn. Like you will suddenly find yourself completely different than who you were before that Mahadasha came. And so any house you can take, like in 2nd house, sudden change and sudden ups and downs with family, depending upon if Ketu and Mars are well placed or ill placed, especially Ketu, because Ketu is the one that will show you if your ups and downs are going to be good or bad. So as long as Ketu is well placed and it's in good position or it's in conjunction with Jupiter, it can show a positive change. Or if the negative change comes, it won't be as much where you just, you suddenly don't know what's going on. In 3rd house in Scorpio, Saturn can represent sudden transformation with your siblings. Like when Saturn Mahadasha came, suddenly something happened between you and your sibling that completely changed your relationship with them. Or in early childhood, something happened between you and your siblings, especially in Antardasha of Saturn, that it came in early on in lives. It gave some sort of a transformation where whatever happened in your life changed you as as a person. So this is how you would judge this Saturn in the sign of Scorpio, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And if you want to know where your Saturn is placed and where Mars and Ketu are placed and how their condition is, check out the link below. Check out my book there, Astrology at the Speed of Light and Conjunctions at the Speed of Light. And when you get this book, I will send you the link to look at your own chart. Just make sure you follow the directions below at the link. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow with Saturn in the sign of Sagittarius. Bye-bye.